And welcome to the Back and Biceps edition on the RDP video library on isometric training. As always, 3 things to note before we jump into the exercises. First off, all exercises are timestamped down below in the description if you want to skip ahead. Second is I'm using what I call my iso loop, which is a very effective isometric training tool, very simple. You can use things like yoga straps, anything that's a strap with a buckle on it will work very well. But if you want to learn how to make your own, video up here. And third, if you want to learn more about things like the programming, sets, reps, that sort of thing, that's far beyond the scope of today's video, and I'm trying to keep my videos from becoming like an hour and a half long. My book, Overcoming Isometric, will give you all the answers to that, as well as the Overcoming Isometrics playlist here on the RDP YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's jump right in. And our first exercise here is the hybrid or overcoming isometric pull-up. Doing this takes a little bit of creativity in the setup, because what you're doing is you're taking the straps or the iso loop and you're going to anchor it near the base of the unit that you're pulling yourself up on. Myself, I run this through the notch selectors here on the Dragon Door Bodyweight Master, but I've seen people do the same thing on the catches for barbell catches and things like power cages, Smith machines, or even just running the strap itself under the base of the unit. Whatever the case may be, you want it to be roughly at about knee height. Make sure it's also fairly tight so it doesn't have too much slack or give, which makes it easier to pull up against the instep of your feet as you do your pull-up. So when you pull up, you're dorsiflexing, pulling against the top of your feet with your elbows roughly at about a 90-degree angle. Your whole body is tight for this. So your shins are engaged, of course, to pull up your toes, quads, hip flexors, abs, but especially your back and biceps. Shoulders are packed down and back, and your biceps are engaged, and you're squeezing the heck out of the bar to engage your forearms. Squeezing your arms in as well to engage your lats. Be sure to continue to breathe so that way you're not having these spikes in blood pressure, and lower yourself down gradually under control. You can do the same thing with rows as well, where you pull yourself up against the strap with handles that you bring closer, about a foot high above the strap. You can use gymnastics rings, suspension handles work very well. This is just one of the bars on the Bodyweight Master. And you're pulling yourself up with your arms on the far side of the strap. Otherwise, if you're driving your elbows into the strap, you're pulling and pushing into it at the same time, and it's counterproductive as far as resistance goes. Play around with different hand positions, overhand grip, underhand grip, and also you can play around with different body positions as far as keeping your body straight or bending your knees to lessen the resistance against gravity so you can pull against the strap even harder. Experiment and see what works best for you to engage your pull chain as hard as possible. And speaking of your lats, this is one of the most effective ways to finally wake up your lats. Chronic sleepy lats are a major problem many people face when it comes to pulling exercises. This is often one of the biggest reasons why people have issues in their elbows, especially with things like pull-ups. To do this, you're hinging at the hips, the strap is running underneath your feet, and you're driving your arms straight back. It's going to engage all of the muscles in your upper back, but squeezing your hands inwards towards your sides has that adduction, which will further engage your lats to a very high degree. Furthermore, it's not only engaging your lats in isolation, but it's teaching your lats how to work along with all of the other muscles in your back, like your traps, your rhomboids, and even your rear deltoids. And all of that creates a very powerful synergistic effect, which will carry over into all pulling exercises to be a lot more effective and also a lot easier on your joints. As always, keep breathing with this, don't hold your breath, and make sure your hips are pushed back to optimize your position. The isometric rear fly is a great way to hit the traps and your rear deltoids to help wean off any sort of muscle imbalances. Start by sitting on the floor with your feet close to each other. And you're going to just pull your arms straight back, squeezing your shoulder blades tight and together as hard as possible, optimizing the tension in your rear deltoids. Play around with the height of your hands as well. With overcoming isometrics, it may take a little bit of experimentation to see what kind of position feels best for the muscles. Experiment with different heights, different hand positions, maybe having your hands a little closer together or further apart. You're going to feel like one position is going to wake up the muscles to a much higher degree, and that's what you want to go with. Also remember to keep your chest elevated, your spine slightly extended, so that way you're not hunched forward and over. That can also engage your traps to a much higher degree. As always, keep breathing and making sure that your focus is on pulling against the strap as opposed to trying to push your feet against the strap. We also have isometric face pulls. Same kind of basic setup. You may want to bend your knees a little bit more for this just so that your hands can get closer to your face, but experiment with the distance that works best for you. And here we have your rotation, we have your elevation, and of course you have your scapular retraction all at the same time. Holding, making sure that you're getting this very much in your traps, but also keep your biceps engaged. Face pulls are actually a very good bicep exercise, and you want to make sure you've got as many muscles involved in this as possible rather than trying to isolate and exclude muscles. So keeping your hands far back, but also experiment with, is it better with your hands closer to your face or further away, kind of like a little bit of an external rotator. See what feels best. Very good therapeutic exercise for the back and rotator cuffs. Then in addition to that, we also have the rows. This is the most basic row where you're just grabbing onto the strap and you're pulling yourself back, chest is up, and you're engaging your forearms, biceps, and all of the muscles in your back as hard as possible. There's a lot of variants that you can do with this. You can attach handles from like a weight machine with here on the carabiner. You may find that you can get this much more in your back and biceps if you have a sturdy handle that you can hold onto, as opposed to something where your grip is the weak link when you're holding onto the strap itself. Same exact thing though. Play around with different hand positions, overhand, underhand, neutral grip, loosening things up. I much prefer using a towel. Towel is a little bit more of a grip position, a little bit more of a challenge for the hands and the forearms, but it just feels like it just nails into the biceps and the shoulders to a much higher degree than handles are. Again, it's all just kind of personal preference, whatever you like to do. I also like to do this on the one side at a time. This way I can really kind of hone in on what kind of strengths and imbalances that I have on one side versus the other. On my right side, I have a lot of imbalances in my right shoulder and a lot of scapular stability issues. So this exercise has done wonders for me in helping me realize where I'm putting my shoulders differently, how I'm engaging my arm differently from the right to left side, squeezing the towel as hard as I possibly can, elbows at about a 90-degree bend, and then I can go back to the two towel and see if it kind of even things out a little bit. Do I notice if the imbalances are still there? Have I corrected it? Does it feel any different? You can also experiment with this where you're leaning back a little bit or sitting more upright. Always want to elevate your chest when you're doing this, and you're keeping your spine extended. But either way, experiment with different positions in your torso with both the unilateral and bilateral versions and see how things feel. Remember, the feeling of these exercises is everything. That's telling you what's working, what's not working, where is there an imbalance, and what needs to be addressed in the long run. We have curls, of course. The seated preacher curls. This one's one of my favorite. Very intense, very focused way to drive tension directly into your biceps. Your elbows are on your thighs, close to your knees, as you see here, but experiment with where you feel the most comfortable. If it's a little bit down lower towards your hips, you may feel it more in your biceps, but it might put a little more pressure into your quads, making it a little bit more uncomfortable. See what feels best for you and just hold and bend the knees to adjust the distance. Of course, there's standing bicep curls as well. Shoulders are back, elbows are in as tight as possible, and pull. Pull with everything you've got. It's very important not to hunch forward when you're doing this. If you hunch forward, it's going to be very much a shoulder exercise. Hands are also closer to the torso. We don't want the elbows forward where the hands are way out in front, because that's going to put a lot more stress on our back, make it more of a bit of a core workout. So keep it tight in and pull the handles in close, and that way you're getting much more of a concentrated effort right into your biceps, but you're still engaging things like your shoulders and your grip and even your core to some degree, so that way your biceps are being worked in a very synergistic way rather than an isolated way, which is much more powerful and going to allow a lot more tension into it. If you use the double towels like this, you can have a neutral or hammer grip, as well as playing with going with a little bit of a twist. See what feels best for you. You may feel it more in the forearm in certain positions, and that forearm tension translates very well up into the arm and into the shoulders. Above all, though, we do not want to feel this too much in our elbows, so experiment with shoulder position if that's the case. And then, of course, we also have our upright row. And this is very handy if you've ever had pain from upright rows with things like barbells or dumbbells. The angle here with the camera shows like I'm lifting up really high, but I'm really not. I'm actually lifting well below my shoulders to avoid that impingement syndrome, which can be so problematic, but it's still very effective for hitting your shoulders and your traps in an isometric fashion. So there you go, the basic exercises I recommend for improving back and bicep strength with overcoming isometrics. As a reminder, again, if you want to learn more about the programming for this stuff, my book, Overcoming Isometrics, is a resource that I recommend you start off with. And if you have any thoughts and questions, please leave them down below as well. Thank you very much for watching. Be fit, live free.